Welcome back to DTNsights. I am Renny Vandewege, the General Manager of Weather and Climate Intelligence for DTN. And I am so honored today to be joined by Dan Talbot, the District Athletic Director at Polk County Schools in Central Florida. Dan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, appreciate you having me. It's always exciting to, talk about weather because obviously Florida's a big state for it, and we're the lightning capital of the world. So we definitely have our issues with weather, but appreciate the opportunity to come on.
Yeah, and so Polk County, correct me if I'm wrong, that's located kind of right between Orlando and Tampa. Is that correct?
We are located right in the middle of the state, right in between Tampa and Orlando, just right off of Interstate 4.
Awesome. Well, I'm located in Lincoln, Nebraska. I promise we don't have to get into any Scott Frost talk today.
That's all right. We got him back.
So. Yeah, you got him back. It sounds like he didn't want to leave in the first place, so that's okay. He's still welcome home if he ever wants to come home. But
that's good.
So Dan, I would sort of love to start by learning a bit about your career, sort of how you ended up where you are today, what your goal was when you started your career. Are you in it now, or how you sort of ended up in your spot?
Oh, it's an interesting question. I was just asked that the other day. It's interesting. I got into athletic administration not by choice. It was one of those situations where I was 27 years old. I became a head football coach down in Arcadia, Florida, and part of the job was you were the head football coach, and you had to be the athletic director. So it was one of those situations where I was basically, young and didn't understand the role or the position. But, when you're young and you want to be a head football coach so bad, you take whatever they give you. And obviously one of those positions was athletic director. Then obviously I moved on to Lakeland High School here in Polk County after 4 years at DeSoto, and was basically sitting in my office and just coaching football, having a great time, no responsibilities. It's an enjoyable feat when you're a head coach, and then you go back to being an assistant. You realize how much you didn't get to coach when you're a head coach, and how much of paperwork and liabilities and all the other just organizing logistics of being a head coach. I don't think young head coaches realize how much it goes in. You don't do a lot of coaching. So I got to be an assistant coach, and then one day we got a new principal, and she came down and said, "Hey, I heard you were an athletic director before." I was like, "Well, I was. I had a, and told her the story. She says, "Fantastic. You're going to be our new athletic director." And so I was kind of, forced into that role as well, because I was raised in the era where if your boss tells you to do something, you do it, and you don't question it, and you just move on. Nowadays, that obviously has changed, but so I became the athletic director and assistant head football coach at Lakeland High School for about 8 years. And then I guess it really became a situation where, I really started to enjoy athletic administration. And then I got to the crossroads of my life. I've been coaching for 25 years. I felt, I've been at every level that you could possibly be at, except for Little League. And I was kind of one of those situations where, what do I want to do next? Do I want to continue coaching? Do I want to be a head coach again? Or what about this athletic administration thing? So I got married and then moved to Winter Haven, which is still located in Polk County. It's a great place in Winter Haven. We live on the chain of lakes there in Winter Haven. And I moved right next door to the principal at Winter Haven High School. And I was at Lakeland, and obviously everybody unfortunately knows Lakeland in our county and its football program. So we just started chatting. She's like, "Hey, I've had issues with my athletic directors. I've had, X amount of athletic directors in so many years. And can you help me find one?" And I was like, "Sure. Yeah, we'll find you one." And then so I started thinking, what do I want to do with my career? And, the county athletic director position in this county, to give you an idea of how great a position it is, I am the third person to hold this position in this district since 1974.
Wow.
So that tells you the kind of position it is in our district and how we value athletics. And we understand that athletics isn't the most important thing in our district, but we do know it's an avenue for students to be successful and grow and extend their careers and extend their college careers and education in both athletics. So we value it and cherish it, and obviously try to put the most forward. So I'm sitting there, and I basically talked to the principal at Winter Haven, and I was like, what about me? And she said, you
Yeah.
come over. I was like, and I was thinking about, because our county's so big landmass wise. It's the side of Rhode Island. I mean, we're so big. I mean, it takes me from the southeasternmost school in our county to the northwesternmost school, probably, if on a good day, an hour and a half. And that's just driving, and I've never leave the county. So I knew that this position, the prior county athletic director, was going to retire at some point in time. And so I felt it would be a safe move or a good move for me to get my name known on the east side of the county. Unfortunately, in our county, there is a divide between the east and the west. And so me going to the east side of the county would, obviously try to do some great things there. And so I took over the athletic director position at Winter Haven in the summer of 2014. And unfortunately, I was only there a year and a half, because in March of 2016, I was promoted to the district athletic director, and I've been in this role ever since.
Wow, that's an awesome journey. I always love the scenarios like, can you recommend somebody? And yes, me. It's always
Yeah,
great when that works out.
So we had a banquet on Sunday night for our Athletic Directors Association, and I received an award for AD of the Year in Florida. And another guy who was the athletic director at Lemon Bay High School named Tom Catanzari, he was getting inducted to the Hall of Fame. Well, he was the athletic director at Lemon Bay when I was the AD and football coach at DeSoto, and him and I built a relationship. And then one of the person that took over for him, it was so funny, because after I received the award, he came up to me and reminded me in 2003, when we were playing them, we missed a field goal at the end of the game, and the winner of that game went in the playoffs. And so obviously we missed it. I got fired as head coach, and he goes, just think if your kid would have made that field goal, would you be here right now? And I thought a lot about that the rest of the night. It's amazing, just moments in time and moments in our history, where would you be today? And he's just like, man, if that kid would have made the field goal, we probably would have got fired. You would have been in the playoffs, and you'd probably still be there. And I was like, well, I don't know about that, but it's just interesting how simple moments in time really shape where you end up today.
The kicker decides everything, including your career.
I know it. And God, and it was funny because in the All-Star game that same year, we kicked a field goal to win the All-Star game, and I looked at him and go, now you make it.
Exactly.
It was pretty funny. Yeah.
Well, Dan, you've always you've been a big advocate for safety, and certainly weather safety.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the experiences you've had that kind of drove that passion area for you to be such an advocate and really care? And it's something that I'll tell you, as a meteorologist, I appreciate so much. The respect that you give that as an aspect.
I never really gave weather a lot of thought, right? I mean, I was born in New York. I lived in California. I went to high school in Alaska, college in Colorado. And so we were just, practices weren't missed. If there was snow, you moved it out of the way. If it was too cold, you just dressed warmer. And then obviously, my little stint of weather came in college, because our head coach had a pacemaker. So anytime there was lightning, we knew we were headed in, and practice was canceled. So that was always great at the college level. But man, when you get to Florida, man, I didn't realize the importance of weather and all the things that we have to deal with down here, with obviously the temperature, the humidity, and especially the lightning. And obviously, when you're in a situation, whether you're a coach, a school-based athletic director, or a district-based athletic director, student safety has to be paramount and your utmost priority. So, and then obviously with all the weather changes here, like last night, we had a monsoon for an hour, and then the sun came out. And it's just ever changing, and you have to have the ability to be able to monitor it and make decisions, and for the best of student safety.
Yeah. It leads me kind of to my next question. How have you seen the decision-making process kind of in the world of high school athletics change over the last decade?
Well, you'll be amazed of how many meteorologists are at a football game on a Friday night in Florida, because they certainly can tell you that it's heat lightning. It's not even close, and the two birds on the power lines haven't moved yet, so we're still safe. I mean, that's the biggest issue we deal with is you know, how many coaches we have in the stands on Friday night and how many meteorologists we have in the stands on Friday night. It's amazing that we have a shortage in coaches and officials, but you go anywhere on a Friday night in Florida and there's 1,000 experts in the stand telling you everything that you're not doing correctly. And weather is just one of those situations where you can't be wrong, and you can't guess, and you can't hope, and you need instant data, you need factual data, and you need to be able to make a decision.
Yeah, and what are some of those kind of tips and tricks or processes that you put in place that eliminate the noise in that decision making process? You're spot on. I've actually been booed. This is a long time ago in my career. I was doing on-site weather support for a baseball game, and I call it the rainless rain delay, but we had lightning close by. We got booed by people, like, what's going on here? But you're right. Everybody's got access to weather apps, and we could sit here and debate the kind of legitimacy or accuracy of those that you just get for free and whatnot. But how do you cut through that noise? Like, what are some of those strategies you use that sort of fend that off, so to speak?
Well, for us, obviously we're a DTN customer and we use DTN, and but I can tell you this: it was interesting because I was watching the Masters one year, and they were in a delay in the Masters, and they pulled up the radar on the screen, and it was the exact same radar that I can see on my phone. There was no difference, and so we tell people all the time, look, if the system we're using is good enough to delay the Masters, then we're using the right program. And so it's not so much eliminating the noise, it's the comfort that what you're using, and then what you're using to make decisions, you're in the right hands, and then it's so much easier to make those decisions, because if it's good enough for the PGA, it has to be good enough for high school football in Central Florida, or soccer, or baseball and softball, or any sport that we offer, swimming. Everything that we choose, we know we're making the right decisions, because if it's good enough for them, obviously it's good enough for us. And that's what we tell people all the time. Like, we're using the same software as all these other major pro sports entities are using. And once people realize that, and obviously we spread the message in the word, and they understand that, then that itself helps eliminate the noise, because it's they're being rest assured that we're not using TikTok or any other social media to determine whether that we're taking the safety of our student athletes very, very seriously, and we want to make accurate decisions, because it's like anything else. If you cancel practice because rain's coming, the rain never shows up. And if you keep practice on, then you get flooded in monsoon. That seems to be the world of athletic administration. There is no right answer.
Yeah. And there's a reason I have that Tiger Woods picture up, not just because I love golf and Tiger, but that was a monumental DTN moment when we sort of convinced Augusta to do morning tee times and threesomes, both tees. That's a major decision for an organization that has done it the same way for nearing 100 years at this point, right? And but I think what you're also highlighting is that protocol in a weather plan, and activating that eliminates the need for a whole lot of discussion, and it's more on the decision.
Correct. And that's the thing about it is, if you think about the history of high school sports, right? As an athletic administrator, you get to go home after school, and then obviously you're going to make your way back up to school for an event at night. And it's not the events with the weather situations that we deal in Florida when you're there, because you can see it, you're there, you're going to make the accurate decision, and you're going to err on the side of caution every single time. But the major problem is, okay, if I'm out of town, there's no athletic events at night, what is that coach doing from 2:30 to 5:30 at practice? Because I can't be at practice every day. And I think that's the most important thing you got to think about is I can make a decision at a game. Look, we're going to delay the game, call the game, do whatever. But what are the coaches doing when you're at practice and no one else is around? And I think, the software that we use obviously gives us the capability to alert every single coach on the field, alert our athletic trainers of, inclement weather, whether it's 30 miles away, 15 miles away, or within our radius of 8 miles, depending on the sport. Those coaches can get instant data, get a text message that tells them, it's coming, be aware, or we're currently in a delay. And then the nice thing is the question is, when you get in a delay, is when can we go back? And I think that's where people, do they go out too soon, or they're running in and out? But we're fortunate enough where that same system DTN provides us is going to tell us when it's safe to go back.
Absolutely. And it's most people think the minute the rain ends, you're fine. Lightning can, as you know, in Florida, can shoot out in all directions, right?
Correct.
And that's why we have rules around, 8 miles, we're done, because it's not safe at that point. So,
well, and people ask the question, why is it 10 miles on a golf course? Well, I'm thinking about the kid that's on,
6, yeah,
T box 11, which is the farthest one from the clubhouse, right? We need to give
right.
him, extra time to get back. But, just taking the thinking out of it and alerting people is the best thing. And obviously, the first year was growing pains in certain situations and units, but now it's common nature that we trust the provider that trust us, and we have a great relationship and partnership, and we enjoy it.
Absolutely. And believe me, we do as well, Dan. So, most people think in safety and weather in Florida that it's lightning, hurricanes, but heat has been the one that is obviously occurs most often. And I feel like Florida has been a rather progressive state in terms of being hyper focused on heat safety. How have you seen the heat safety component really improve over time?
Well, it's interesting, because obviously with the Zachary Martin Act here in Florida, if the temperature is over certain degrees, we make sure we have to have shade provided to the student athletes. We have cold water immersion tubs available to our student athletes when it's working. And then obviously as the temperature increases, and it's not, is it 90 degrees outside? It's an ambient temperature that configures wet bulb globe temperature, right? And so it look, you can probably explain it better than I can. I just know it takes in the angle of the sun, the clouds, the wind, where you are, and somehow it's kind of like a calculator. It spits out the right answer for you. And then we look at our chart and, whether we have to modify practice, whether we have to give so many water breaks per hour during that practice, or it gets to the point where can you even go outside when it's so hot? And so we use DTN's wet bulb globe to give us that information. A lot of people have the handheld thermometers that they hold up, but if you read the label on that, the temperature could be skewed if it's in direct sunlight. So there's a lot of misconceptions. And the thing is, when you're dealing with student athlete safety and you're not allowed to be outside, and then you go outside and something happens to a student athlete and you weren't supposed to be there. I mean, I always tell our athletic administrators in our county, if a lady can pull into McDonald's and order a cup of coffee and then put that cup of coffee in her lap and then drive off and hit a speed bump and then spill it on herself at her own fault and burn herself and sue McDonald's because the coffee was too hot and win, what do you think is going to happen to us?
Yep.
And that's just the society that we're in. It's, no one asked for it. It's just where we are. And, knowing that, you got to be prepared. But, the heat illness down here is very serious. And for whatever reasons. And I think the day is an age of when, I participated in high school and in college where, getting water was a sign of weakness. Taking a break was a sign of weakness. Yep. And so you're trying to reprogram coaches, because if you think about it, coaches coach the way they were coached, because that's what they know, and they think whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent. And so just providing them the data, and here in Florida, we have to We have to take a heat illness course every year and refresher course, and we have the wet bulb globe on our phones to be able to predict. The thing is the prediction model is what's the greatest thing, is because you can see it. And obviously, when we get to the point where we have to modify or change practices, we can do that and make it safe. And I don't think, I never wanted to be out there when it was so hot as a coach. So I know the kids wearing a helmet, or the kids, doing swimming and stuff like that, or cross country, they don't want to be out there either. I never did.
Yeah. Hey, welcome to 3-a-days. You can't have water and maybe take this salt tablet, right? I mean, and I remember my father telling me stories of the same thing, and I'm not going to mention the words that he said he was called, but if you went to get water, you were weak. I mean,
correct.
And sometimes toughness is making a smart decision for your health. I mean, that be tough and be smart, right? It's amazing.
Yeah, the courage to step up and do what's right. I mean, if you have to cancel practice 30 minutes earlier, or, you have to be a coach that can think on their feet. And if you have to modify your practice, a good coach is going to be able to still make a productive practice, whether they can do contact or not, whether they can have pads on or not, or whether they have to leave the outside practice field and go into the gym and get a practice. And a good coach is going to make valuable use of time. Most coaches use it as an excuse. Well, we can't practice because it was too hot, or we can't practice because it was lightning. There's a lot of things you can do as a good coach, and you should be preparing for those.
Absolutely. We've started to use the phrase around our platforms. I know you use Weather Century, but we call them operational decisioning platforms. It's less about here's a weather website that gives you information, but like you're describing a scenario where you and your coaches and trainers are making decisions at scale. There's so many decisions made all the time, and our intent is to essentially like take that variable out, and here's the info relative to the decision that you need to be made.
Correct. That's the thing for us is we are now recognizing that we're not, as coaches, not meteorologists. So we're relying on the experts to give us the information and really, I mean, and make the decision for us. We know that if lightning's within a certain area, we can't be out there. We know if it's the wet bulb globe temperature is too high, that we either have to modify or go indoors. And it leaves the decision making out of it. And that's the great thing, is you don't have to wonder, well, I wonder if this and that. We get our readings, we get our temperatures, we get our alerts, and then we know the decisions we have to make. And then we can focus on, the decisions that we need to be focused on is, okay, we're going in the gym, what can we do to get something out of this practice? Or, okay, we can only be outside for 2 hours with no pads on, right? How can we modify this, and worry about those decisions, because those decisions affect wins and losses more than, modifying or altering a practice for student safety.
That's right. Wet bulb globe temp, and when you say that's a mouthful,
yeah.
But a lot of people are like, that sounds something fake. It's actually a very cool way to measure heat safety. It's as you mentioned, there's angle of the sun, heat, humidity, wind. When you put these variables together, it's actually measuring the body's ability to cool itself. Mm-hmm. And under certain scenarios, that gets harder and harder. And then when you're exerting, like you would be in a football practice or something,
cross country,
or whatever it is, right? And now you're making it even harder on yourself. And so, as I said, I love sort of the progression of understanding that heat safety is a very silent, kind of non-sexy thing to talk about. Well, lightning, wow, look how, it's a flash bang, sort of an intense safety risk, but heat safety sneaks up on you really fast. And so it's important to be on top of that as well. So, Dan, we're going to wrap up with a segment we call Heat Burst, which are sort of 5 kind of fun questions. We'll learn a little bit about you and in some scenarios here. So,
you want to put a disclaimer up, because if you're asking me the first thing that comes to my mind,
it won't be that rapid of give me one word answer on no. So Here's the first one. So how would Dan Talbot describe Dan Talbot, the high school athlete?
Lazy.
Lazy. Okay. Interesting. You played college athletics, is that right?
Yes.
And did so being lazy.
Uh, you know, seeing what student athletes go through now, I could have spent more time in the weight room. There's a lot more looking back at it now. Now, if you'd asked me this question, I don't want to age myself, but when I was in high school, I'm the hardest working kid on the field. But looking back at it, there's a million more things I could have done to, one, take care of my body, two, be in better shape. It's interesting too, because my first few years of college, I struggled because in high school, the coach's job was not only to teach us a game in a safe way, but also to get us in shape. You learn quickly that if you show up to college camp out of shape, they're moving on.
Yeah.
And so I could have developed some better work ethics in high school to obviously jumpstart my college career. But fortunately enough, they kept me around, and I certainly figured it out.
That's awesome. What is the best athlete that you've had come through your programs?
Oh man, we are fortunate enough here in Polk County to where we've had, I don't know if I can name just one. I mean, you got, the Pouncey twins, obviously Mike and Marquise Pouncey. You have Chris Sale, who's pitching with the Braves now. You got Chris Rainey, Ahmad Black. We were fortunate enough where, the 2006 team that we coached, we sent 17 kids to the SEC. When you think of best athlete, I mean, I got to think of, John Brown, who was a defensive tackle for me. I mean, he's 6'3", 290 pounds, and he could run like a deer. And then obviously Kendrick Stewart, who's a former player of mine, he was 6'1", 300 pounds. And after he sacked the quarterback in the Florida California All-Star game, he did a standing backflip. So just seeing the ability of some of the bigger guys, right, and how athletic they are. I mean, there's no way I could ever do a backflip in my life. And then to watch a kid in full gear and full pads do a standing backflip at 300 pounds was truly amazing. So I'd have to say, so my short answer is Kendrick Stewart.
Cool. I can't do one off a diving board or a trampoline. But it's amazing when you come across just, sort of freak athleticism and talent. It's so impressive. And I imagine you knew early that they had that even at early high school age, or even maybe middle school, you can tell that unbelievable talent early.
You see the potential.
Yep.
And then as a coach, you have to figure out to, push them to get that, to put that potential. I mean, that's our job is, we're not always their friends and we're not always the most likable people, but, I think it's one of those situations where now that they've grown and matured and they didn't see it then, because I'm sure they had a lot of choice words for us, and especially after practices or weight room sessions. But I think now they knew we had their best interests in mind to push them to be better versions of themselves.
Yeah, I taught for a period of my life. I call that the delayed reward, but man, is it a reward when you're making the impact in the moment, but it might take them a year, 10 years, 20 years to recognize it.
Mm-hmm.
I love that satisfaction even when it comes then.
I think one of the greatest things coaching high school football is when you're in it long enough and your former players come back, and it's not just high school football. That's what I did. But if you're coaching high school athletics and your former students come back to introduce you to their wife or their husband or their kids, I mean, there's no better satisfaction, because that the athlete that you coach wants you to meet, their spouse or their child, which is, you're assuming their most prized possession, is an unbelievable reward.
Absolutely. What's the best sporting event you've ever witnessed?
Sporting event. Man, I would have to say um, any New York Ranger hockey game in Madison Square Garden.
Oh yeah, that's a bucket list. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a great place. Honestly, I'd say the greatest sporting event I've ever seen was 2007 or 8. Um, I went to Army Navy in Philadelphia,
Oh
and,
really?
and obviously the game, but it was everything. Like you said, sporting event. So we went to Army Navy, and just to see all the pageantry and the president changing sidelines and all the flyovers, and I mean the whole Army Navy experience was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable experience, because I'm come from a military background with my father and grandfather being in the military. So to go to that game and just witness this, all the traditions, the pageantries, and everything that there's so much more that goes on at that game live than you ever see on TV. So I would have to say Army Navy.
That's a great one. Just a couple more here. What's the craziest weather situation you've been involved with related to your job?
Oh, well, I guess the craziest, it would be the first hurricane I've ever had to go through. But now they're like, okay, one's coming, and the people see all the memes about Florida people when hurricanes coming. I hate to say it, but they're spot on and they're true. But for me to be in my first ever hurricane, which was 2004, when three of them hit us back to back to back, that it was unbelievable, because
Probably Charlie. And
yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah.
I never knew trees could fly.
Yeah.
And then the amount of water, right? I mean, so my first hurricane in Florida, or major hurricane event, and it's one of those things where it's like, and hurricanes are the worst, because you see them coming, they're coming, and then you hope that they turn, and you wish they turn, but then you're wishing it, because it's going to hit somebody, right? It's just one of those situations where it's like, can we just blow a bomb up and just blow it up and have it disappear? Because you don't want to wish it upon anybody when you've been in them. So obviously hurricanes, and I've been through tornadoes, I've been through earthquakes are freaky, but earthquakes happen. You don't know. I mean, your dog will start barking, and then all of a sudden you have an earthquake, and it's over and gone, depending on the magnitude of it. But the hurricane is the craziest, because it's coming, and then are you prepared? Do you have enough gas? Do you have enough food? Does your generator work? This and that. All the trees in my yard, are they going to land on the roof? And so there's a lot of anxiety leading up to those.
Yeah, and they last a really long time. They're not refreshing afterwards. It's typically still very hot and humid. Air conditioning may be out.
Yes.
So much rain. It's just kind of that kind of wet,
we
humid.
We were fortunate this year. The one that hit us pretty hard this past year, seasonably cool when the hurricane came through after it left. Usually when they come through, and the next day there's not a cloud in the sky, and it's unbelievably hot. And like you said, the air conditioner's not working, your power's been out, and you don't want to keep looking in the cooler to make sure the ice is still intact and not melting. But every time you open it, the worse it gets. So
the final one here was submitted by Steve Tennell. I put that disclaimer on this. He said you enjoy boating.
Look, I'm a mountain guy. I love the mountains of Colorado and Alaska. I picked up boating because my wife is a huge boater. And I mean, we've been married since 2013, and we are on our fourth boat. So I'm glad my wife doesn't change husbands like she does boating, but we live on a lake in Winter Haven. My wife grew up on boats her whole life, and so she's got me into the love of going boating with her. We're fortunate enough where we live on a lake, so we can do it's not a fishing boat, unfortunately, but we do a lot of the water sports with the wake surfing and the knee boards and the tubing. And then we love to go with our families up to Tennessee on Lake Del Hollow and rent a houseboat and pull our boats and jet skis up. So we do have a good time. if Steve would ever come to Florida during the right time, he could take a ride.
Well, I just hear that he just asked for approval for that trip, I think. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. They always say, right, the happiest day of a boat ownership is the day you buy it and the day you sell it.
Yeah, and the best boat to have is your friend's boat. So I can tell you that.
That's exactly right. It's the best friend to have as well as a
Correct.
friend.
Because if you got a boat, you gotta run it. And it's not one of those toys that can sit around. They're constant upkeep. But we're fortunate enough where we have one, and we have a lot of friends that come over and take advantage of it, and we enjoy hosting people and showing people a good time and what, all the things we have to offer here in Central Florida.
Absolutely. Well, Dan, I'm so thankful for you joining today. I'm thankful for your advocacy, not only of DTN, but just honestly weather risk in general. I know you're very active in supporting other schools on how to be in other districts on how to be weather aware and put really good plans in place. So truthfully, from DTN's perspective, we really appreciate that. It's an important aspect.
Well, and please understand, we here in Polk County, we appreciate, and I don't even, it's more of a, we appreciate the relationship that we have with you guys. I mean, and, to have people, because when you purchase things and, it's a vendor kind of relationship, and we don't feel that way with you guys. Steve's always calling to check in, make sure we're okay. Do we need anything? Getting us excited about the new platform that's coming out and those different things. So it's a partnership, it's a relationship, and that's the thing that we appreciate the most. And I think we appreciate the fact that we have partnered with a company that cares just as much as we do about the safety of our student athletes, and that's why we've been together for so long, and it's very appreciative on our end as well. And I hope you guys know that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we wake up excited about every day is solving weather risk. I always say, like, weather, people make jokes about it or whatever. It's often one of the worst things that happen to people is when you've got a weather event that disrupts or it's dangerous, or to relieve that anxiety and to partner people through what can be a really difficult situation to get through. That's kind of our life mission.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, and we didn't talk about this, but the one thing we use a lot of it for too is, athletic directors and every coach will tell you all they care about is money. All they care about is money. Well, we have to watch the budget. But what's been interesting is, we have access to the meteorologist through the chat feature in the app. And do you know how much money we have saved? Because in the future, or not the future, but before, we would show up to a sporting event. Here comes the rain and lightning. We're going to sit there all night long and wait it out. 30 more minutes, 30 more minutes, 30 more minutes. Well, the whole time the bus driver the cash register is ringing, right? The longer that bus is there, the more that bus is cost. And now, with access to the meteorologist, we can ask them, hey, how long is this thing going to last? Right. And it's like, it'll be gone in 4 hours. So right then and there, okay, the game is canceled. Let's work on a rescheduling plan. We get everyone out, home, and safe instead of trying to, wonder how long it's going to be here, which way is it going, this and that. And the whole time, the teams are in the locker room, but you're dealing with the fans. They don't want to leave the stadium, but they should go back to their cars and all these things. So being able to have access to that meteorologist, say, look, it's going to be there a while. And then that way we can just cancel the game, get a reschedule plan, get everyone home safe. And, so that's been a major plus for us, saving us money on that end. And not a lot of people realize that or talk about that. But as athletic directors, we have to be, unfortunately, money conscious when we do things.
Yeah. The value shows up in a lot more ways than you realize. No doubt about it. Well, Dan, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining, and for everybody listening, we appreciate you watching another episode of DTNsights. Have a great day.